Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where I answer the questions that you have that are most common about your health and fitness goals. Now, this is a topic that I was going to do just specifically a YouTube video on, to be honest, I just hate editing with this software, but it's such an important topic, so I wanted to make sure that I cover that today. So we're going to talk about how do you know that your food is healthy. Now, some of you may know how to read a food label. That's great, but do you know what the companies that are producing those products are putting on the labels that make them sound healthy but aren't necessarily your best option? So I have an example here today. I want to teach you what's really important to pay attention to when you are reading labels. Now, we're not even talking supplement labels, guys. That's a whole other topic that we're not going to approach today because fortunately and unfortunately, the FDA does not regulate supplements. So it's kind of a, use at your own risk, do your due diligence. There are some things to pay attention to because supplement labels are a little bit different than nutrition labels. Nutrition labels have to be followed, the guidelines have to be followed for the FDA regulations, but there's still some loopholes and a little bit of fudging room there. So we're gonna talk about that, what's important, what's good to pay attention to, and how do you know that it's a product that you should be eating. Now, of course, I don't believe that there's anything that you should completely cut out of your life if it's something that you truly love, but there are certain things that are better than others. So we're going to talk about, again, what to pay attention to when you're reading a label. Now, I'm going to flat out tell you that if it's boxed, shelf stable, something that can last for quite a while on your shelves at home without spoiling, it's probably not your best option because there are definitely things that are going to be in that product to make it shelf stable, including additives and preservatives and some things that are just downright not healthy for you. But I am going to give you some examples today, so hopefully that will help. I see some people hopping on. Actually, so far everybody on are people I know, but it's a great topic, so I think it's really super important. It took me a lot of years to figure this out. In the beginning, I used to eat things that I thought were healthy, and of course, the more that I learned and the more that I got to know, I started to realize, wow, I fell for the gimmicks and the special words that the companies were using. And so it really is frustrating to me as a nutrition specialist, whatever you want to call me. I don't necessarily know that I'm a complete expert because I feel like there's still so much to learn. I don't know everything. I don't know who does, but I still, I find it fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about what's important when it comes to reading labels. Now, I do think that we should start with the nutrition label itself. And while, I really feel there's not enough information on just the nutrition label, I think that it's a good place to start. We're going to talk about what's important to look at. Most people, of course, are paying attention to calories, and if you're paying attention to fats, which really what I think you should be paying more attention to is the sugars that are involved. So if you do pay attention to some of these things, you can kind of get a good idea. At least, does it fit your macros? Are you paying attention to that when you put it into MyFitnessPal? Now, this is a product that, of course, as a kid, I thought was like the super healthy version, right? Kicks. As a matter of fact, it was one of those that I wouldn't eat because it didn't taste as good. Like, in general, I thought that cereal was healthy. And so, of course, I wanted things like anything with sugar, Lucky Charms, things like that, because I had the marshmallows. And of course, these days, I know that pretty much every cereal on the shelf is processed food and it's not your best option. But, to most of us, Kix is at least a better option, right? But let's talk about that because I want to point out a few things in there. So, if you just look at that label itself, it's not going to give you enough information. It might give you the basics, but where I really feel that you should be looking at now, first of all, there is one important part of that nutrition label I think is super important that most people miss. And I believe that would be the serving size, because here's part of the problem. That's great if, okay, wow, it falls in my macros for the day. Let's just take into consideration salad dressing. Fantastic. But if you look at the serving size, it's 2 tablespoons. Who uses 2 tablespoons of salad dressing? I mean, as a kid, it was like, how much can I stick on there of that dressing? I drenched my salad in ranch dressing. There's a lot of sugar in dressing, obviously a lot of fats. And so, of course, it doesn't make any difference what the nutrition label says if you're using way more than the serving size requires. So, again, you have to pay attention to that. Candy says her Special K with strawberries was her favorite as an adult. I'm going to say I love like Raisin Bran, which again also sounds like a healthier version, but if you take a peek at what that nutrition label says and what I'm going to talk about next, which is the ingredient list, you find it's not quite as healthy as you anticipated. So I find it really fascinating that, just humans in general, we tend to look at these products and think, okay, well, the product itself says it's healthy, it's all natural, it's organic. Well, that doesn't mean enough information. So we'll hit that in a minute, but let's pay attention to where I think is the most important part that you should be paying attention to on any product that has a label is the ingredient list, right? Because that ingredient list is going to tell you much, much more than just the general nutrition label. First of all, if you haven't already heard, when you look at the ingredient list, the first product on there, the first ingredient has the most of that product. So in this particular product, Kix, it's whole grain corn. Now, personally, not a fan of corn products, but it is what it is, but whole grain corn. So obviously that product is in the most abundance of, in that product, right? So that ingredient has the most of that. The problem is if you don't know what you're looking for, you don't realize how much of certain things that are in there, such as sugar. Because companies know that you're paying attention, of course, we tend to be a little more health savvy these days. Unfortunately, not enough, but we're looking for things like that. So, we're looking up here going, well, total sugar is only 4 grams, not too bad. By the way, this has 34 grams of carbohydrates in 1.5 cups of cereal. For most of us, that's a lot. That's a lot in one serving. So, okay, but that's not the problem. The problem is if you pay attention, the third ingredient is sugar, okay? So yeah, even Kix, which is a healthier version of a cereal, still has quite a bit of sugar. But if you keep reading on the ingredient list, the next one is salt, but then the next one down is brown sugar syrup. So what the companies do is they break these down into the individual ingredients, and they may include 5 or 6 different types of sugar, but they list them all separately. So you don't see that, wow, there's a whole lot of sugar in that product, even something that we can deem a little bit healthier. So anything ending in ose is going to be a sugar. Also things like agave, maple syrup. You guys, I don't care how natural it is still a sugar, and your body is going to treat it as such. It is going to spike your insulin. So you have to keep in mind that while, yeah, there's some things that are better than others, anything that's going to spike insulin is going to teach your body to store as fat. So again, keep that in mind. So pay attention, corn syrup solids. There's a lot of different ways that they can list sugar that we just don't even know. The other things that you need to pay attention to on there are things like additives and preservatives. In order to make those products shelf stable, they have to add things that are going to keep it shelf stable. Well, technically, those are not necessarily good for your body. Those tend to be toxins. So what does your body do with those things? Well, body fat is your body's form of survival. It's a survival mechanism. It's going to start shoving some of those things that it doesn't know what to do with in fat stores in order to protect you from those things. So if you're not sure what it is, those are things like, well, by the way, MSG, which most of us have a sensitivity to some degree, and it's definitely not good for you, but anything that is like a number and a color, so like caramel number 45, things like that, that is not healthy. They've even talked about research showing that it can actually cause some situations with, effects of ADHD, because again, it's not good for your kids' health. It's not good for their systems. It's causing them to react to it. I remember my sister having extreme reactions to sugar as a kid, and I remember the expert saying, no, that's not a thing. Like, I'm watching her bounce off the walls after eating sugar. So that absolutely means something to me. You have to look at the evidence, not just because they're going to go around and try to minimize it, and they're going to play it off on something else. And we're going to talk about how they do that in just a second. So you have to really pay attention to the ingredient list. That is much more telling than the nutrition label itself. So those are things that that's the first thing I do. I don't even look at the front of the package. I look to see what the ingredient list is before I'll purchase anything. Same thing with some of those sponsored items that pop up on my Facebook ads. Sounds interesting. Pop it up, look at it, and go, oh, vegetable oil is number 2. Not a good idea, right? Because vegetable oil, as a really great example, have you seen those commercials where they're showing, well, it's heart healthy because it's plant-based, so it's good for you? Yes, but it's refined with chemicals. It's not a good option. The fact that they can put a heart thing on it and say that it's healthy for the heart, that's the biggest crock of garbage I've ever heard. It can actually damage not only your DNA, but if you intend to have children at some point, it can actually damage their DNA as well. So those processed options are just not healthy for you. So if those are included, by the way, sugar-free creamer, one of the top ingredients is vegetable oil. So you have to pay attention to that. So any of those and trans fats, not a great option. You need to look for some of the healthier things like coconut oil, olive oil, macadamia nut oil, avocado oil, but they need to be cold pressed and not refined with chemicals. That is super, super important. So again, if the product is shelf stable, honestly guys, if it has a label, we're borderlining, are we even supposed to eat that? Now, olive oil is obviously going to have a label on it, so then you just have to go to the ingredient list and make sure there's not a bunch of other things that are added to it to make it an unhealthy version. So let's talk about other things that you might see on the package that make it sound super healthy but aren't necessarily what you think. Because unfortunately, the FDA doesn't, there's some words that you might find on packages that the FDA doesn't have a definition for or doesn't actually do anything. Like they're kind of like free words that any company can use, and it makes it sound really good or healthier than it really is. Like the word farm. There's no definition for farm. So if it says farm something and a pretty picture of a farm and you're thinking, wow, okay, that's really super fresh and healthy, and not necessarily. Again, they're going to use anything to market it that makes it sound like it's really better than it is. You have to know what to look for. So even on this package, what really, really bothers me is, okay, I got to back up for a quick second and say, you know, notice that a lot of these products they're fortified with vitamins and sometimes minerals, right? The downside is you realize those are synthetic, right? So your body does not absorb and utilize them the same as if you're getting those minerals and vitamins from actual food, right? So let's say vitamin C. If you're eating citrus fruit and you're getting the vitamin C from the citrus fruit, your body uses that much more efficiently than a synthesized version that you're getting in a cereal or say a bread, right? Just not the best option. So again, you just have to pay attention to that. Now, an extension of that, hold on, I gotta pick up my notes that are spreading across I like being outside, so, okay. My notes are flying away. Okay, so Lynette Marto says, how about canned goods and shelf life? So the problem with canned goods is, you know, it can actually change the ability of the vitamins to be delivered to you because, of course, they have to put things in it like extra salt, you know, make it brined, anything that preserves the product itself. Now, is it the worst option? You know what? Flash frozen is probably going to be a way better option than canned. The deal is, though, that, of course, as we're in this kind of pandemic and some uncertainties going on, and most of us do want to have some sort of food ability to store some food just in case. It's not the worst thing that you can have. I just don't know that it's the best because you're not getting the full effect of all the fresh vitamins and minerals that you can get from either the fresh produce or from flash frozen. So little different ball game. You just have to think quality. And if you can it yourself, that's even going to be a little bit better option than buying a canned product from the store. So again, you just have to kind of call it for what it's worth. Think about how quality the vitamins, the minerals, and the product is that you're eating. So the one thing I wanted to point out on this box is something that just really bothers me, because what they do is they take research and then they kind of flip it to kind of say, so if this product contains it, this is good for this. So the case in point on here, it says it's a good source of calcium and vitamin D to help build and maintain strong bones. Okay, well, you may have thrown some synthetic vitamin D and calcium in there, but does your body really absorb and utilize that towards your bones? Remember, this is a processed product. So again, you're kind of relying on their fact that they're using some research. And yes, calcium and vitamin D actually support strong bones. But does this kind of calcium and vitamin D support your strong bones? Again, this is a synthetic version. It's not even how much you get, it's how much does your body absorb and actually utilize. So again, to me, that's just too iffy because there's no guarantee that your body's actually going to use it the same as it would the real product, right? The real vitamins and minerals. So again, you know, I also don't like it tries to make this kid friendly, right? It's kid tested and parent approved. Great. Again, it's still a processed food. It's still going to break down as sugar in your system immediately. You just have to call it for what it is. Now, is it a better option than Fruit Loops and Lucky Charms? Well, of course it is, right? At least it has less added sugar, but that making it less bad doesn't make it more good. Does that make sense? Kind of like, okay, my favorite are the Oreo Thins, right? Sounds like a great option, right? They're thinner, so you're getting less calories, less fat, blah, 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 blah. Yes, but if you eat the whole bag instead of 3, there's really no benefit to that. You've really pretty much undone the benefits. Just because a product is deemed a little bit healthier or a better version of, that doesn't make it healthy. Does that make sense? So let's continue this a little bit, because again, there's some words that you should be looking for that aren't necessarily super fabulous. And if you want a really good list of vocabulary words and how they're skewed a little bit, you can go, I got a lot of information off of a website called experiencelife.com. They have a whole list of things to look for and what they actually mean. So, things like cage free, well, there's certain stipulations to that. That's great if it's cage free, but does that mean that it just has the ability to go outside in a very small space and be outside? So again, the rules and the regulations to what those vocabulary words mean may not be what you think they are. Same thing with, when you're using something that's organic, right? Organic just means that the product did not use synthetic pesticides. Now, it could have used natural pesticides. So keep in mind that there's rules and regulations for that. Same thing if a product is deemed organic, it means that 95% of the ingredients used were organically grown, right? Or it could be something like, I gotta make sure I get this correctly. I gotta look at my little notes here. If it says that it is made with organic ingredients, it only has to include a minimum of 70% that meet the standard of organic. So again, you gotta really know what those things mean, and then sometimes they follow loopholes. So if you're looking, let's talk about like a non-nutritive sweetener like sucralose or Splenda, which, by the way, although it's recommended to diabetics, it actually through research shows to spike blood sugar. Same with some of the sugar alcohols. So just because they're non-nutritive, which means if you look at the serving size and you look at how many sugars it contains and you look at the calories, they actually, because it has less than 0.5 grams per serving, they're allowed to say that it has 0 grams of sugar. Now, you have 4 or 5 of those packets, you're spiking blood sugar pretty good, right? So again, it does contain calories. Here's another example. I can't believe it's not butter spray. It says that per serving, it has 0 calories. But did you know that container has 900 calories? Yeah, right? Okay, so it does have calories. Not to mention, read the ingredients, it is not a great product. It's something I used to recommend, but over time I've learned a lot more about the product, and now I go, oh gosh, you're actually way better off using full-on straight grass-fed butter. Like, it's just a better option. So if you get to know, and listen, you guys, it's your job to educate yourself. It's not anybody else's job. Do I agree with Big Food? It's a little frustrating because, again, they want to sell their product. So to me, that's a little counterproductive when they are making foods. They obviously have scientists that are trying to make that the best tasting, the most addictive, so that you'll come back. They want it to be ultra tasty, right? Because if you like it, you're going to come back and get more. Just like with Doritos. The whole slogan is, bet you can't eat just one. So yeah, again, you've got to think whose best interest are they focusing on? It's not yours. So let's talk a little bit about more things that you might see on a label that might not be good for you. So, sometimes they use misdirection. So you might be looking at something and it talks about how great this one thing is, but it's taking your attention away from the fact that's great that this is organic, but it's still full of sugar. Like, case in point, I don't care if a cookie is organic. It's still full of sugar. All natural, like this is now all natural maple syrup. It's still sugar. So again, you have to know what it is and what it's doing and why you're eating it. Now, once in a while, having a little bit of maple syrup on your pancakes, that's one thing. But if you think that this is a healthy option, so you're putting it on your organic waffles every day, that's why you can't get rid of the fat, guys. Sugar stunts your progress when you're trying to burn fat because your body cannot burn fat in the presence of insulin. Okay. All right. So other things that you might be paying attention to. So things like if a product says it's fat-free, okay, great. But because it's fat-free, now you got to pay attention and look at the sugar. They have to replace that flavor somehow. So sometimes a sugar-free is higher in fat. Now, not all fats are bad. Your body does different things with the different macronutrients. But you just have to pay attention because it's not as you think. And that's the frustration. Low calorie, right? Still may contain sugar alcohol, still may contain sugar. Just because something is low calorie doesn't make it a healthier version than something that's high calorie. You have to know what you're looking for. Because again, those companies like to look for loopholes. So words that are not regulated by the FDA, things that sound healthy but really aren't, some of the things you might see on products because they use clever names, right? Or clever words for it. No sugar added. Okay, but there was already sugar in it. So that's great. There's no sugar added, but it also already has a ton of sugar in it. All natural. All natural basically doesn't mean anything. So again, taking notes from the same website, it says the FDA does not regulate the use of this word. These foods could even have, even though it says all natural, they may still have artificial dyes, chemical preservatives, and even GMO products. So it sounds good, but just because it sounds good, there's so many words that aren't regulated that, doesn't necessarily mean anything. So same thing with like farm raised, they don't regulate the word or define the word farm, so it doesn't mean anything. Fresh is great. It just means that it is a raw product, never heated or frozen. However, that doesn't mean that it might not still receive post-harvest pesticides. It could be washed in a mild chlorine or some acids. It could receive ionizing radiation, or be protected in additional waxes and coatings and things like that. So again, do you really know what your food is, where it's coming from? You just really have to know and pay attention and do your due diligence and know what the products are. Make sure that I'm covering all this. Another tactic that they'll use is greenwashing. So, even if it says it's sustainable, what's sustainable? The packaging's sustainable. Again, these are words that sound really great, but unless you do some digging and know what it really means and what they mean by that, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Responsibly made, according to whom? Because there's really no regulation for that. Again, we talked about all natural, and even the pictures can actually mislead you. You might see something that looks beautiful and it has a picture of a farm and a sun and flowers. That means nothing. It just gives you this good feeling. They even talk about how when the labels, the nutrition label and the ingredient labels are listed in green, people feel better about the product than if those things are listed in red. It's just a color difference. It could be the exact same product, just a color difference in the printing, and it might mean something to you because emotionally you're thinking, well, it's green, so that's good, right? Also things like medical claims, they might say kind of like the boosting the bones, builds good bones. Okay, that's great, but is there really enough of the right product in there being absorbed by your body to actually do that? So they're citing facts, but they're not citing the right facts according to their product. And I find that extremely misleading and counterproductive. So, their suggestion or their example on that site was, they can't say that this product can boost your immune system, but they can say that it supports your ability to boost your immune system. So, kind of like I saw an ad today for a product that you drink every day that burns fat. Well, it's CLAs. Okay, yeah, that might support your body's ability to burn fat, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all the garbage that you ate last weekend is now burned off by that product, that liquid product, and now you're going to be healthy and trim. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. If it sounds too good to be true, pretty much always it is too good to be true. There's no pill, there's no secret, there's no gold there, guys. If you want to be healthy, you have to do what it takes. Now, again, I'm not saying that you can't here and there have maybe a little bit of ice cream or chocolate, but if you are eating the standard American diet, if you are eating processed food that's boxed, shelf stable, and you're eating that on a regular basis, same thing with eating out. You can't control what restaurants do to that, and even though they might say it's a healthier option, you don't know that they're back there adding extra vegetable oils, or they deep fried that in oil they had there sitting there for weeks. You don't know. You don't have control over that. So while you think you're making better options or better choices, you're not, right? Because again, that's why I prefer to predominantly eat out at home or eat at home, because I know what I'm cooking and eating. If I go out, it's usually a splurge, and I know that it's probably not going to benefit my body. And I can tell, because when I'm done, if there's things in there that my body doesn't like, I'm going to feel like garbage when I'm done. So please just look at these things for what they are. They want you to buy their product. So it's in their best interest to make it sound as healthy and as appealing as possible. And it's in your best interest to really pay attention, do your due diligence, educate yourself, and read the label. Make sure that you know what it's really worth. So have an incredible evening, you guys. If you have any more questions, please ask. Like, the whole goal is to educate you. I feel like there's so much misinformation out there. And of course, with what's going on right now, your greatest desire should be to be as healthy as possible in order to have a great immune system. That's the one way that we can beat this. And of course, we know that 75% of Americans are actually overweight and 47% are obese. That's a risk factor, guys. That puts you in a higher risk category for any disease, not just the virus that's going around, but anything, any sort of illness. So, you know what? It has to be worth it to you. You have to make those choices Health is a choice. So, and with that, stay healthy, my friends.